said before, it's not only a sort of cultural myth, the GDPR, it's an economic bet. It is to say that you can't have innovation that is not built on the uses and on the respect of the users. So in Europe, we want to build sustainable innovation through GDPR.
Well, you know, I think it's going to be a very interesting debate because the reality is that on the vision of the task, we have a very different perspective. And the idea is to see, by the way, if there is a European vision, a Chinese vision, or an American vision, or are we going to go all together for a global international vision? And that's exactly the point. But by the way, you know, one of the questions is that you have decided to implement this law, but what are you mean to make it really implemented and respected by not only the European companies, but by the international companies and especially by the American companies?
But I think until now the GDPR is becoming a reality, and all the stakeholders are in fact grasping all the potentialities of the GDPR. The citizens first, they are turning their heads towards the regulators all over Europe to have their new rights respected. And in France, for instance, we have 60% of increase in our complaints. So it's a very interesting factor because it shows that people in Europe, and it's probably the same in the US or even in East Asia, people, they want to be master of their digital lives. And so GDPR offer them this possibility, and I think it's interesting. Speaking now for the companies, they are starting to implement the GDPR, and in particular, for instance, designating their digital officer. And I think it's an opportunity for them, and most of them are saying this, to re-engineer within their companies the data governance, which in most cases is bringing a lot of value, new value, to the companies. And the third stakeholders are, of course, the regulators. Through the GDPR, we have in Europe to work differently. We have to learn to work together in between the European regulators, to start this operational cooperation in order towards the big international actors to speak with one voice. And this is very deep changes in these national regulators, because until now they were more used to deal with domestic issues, not transborder issues. So through these three types of actors, we can see the first implementation of the GDPR. Now, if the question is what for the visitors, for the people wanting to act in Europe, as it was said before, the purpose of the GDPR is to bring a sort of equal level playing field in Europe, and to say to the people, to the industry, to the companies not established in Europe, that if they want to operate in Europe, they have to respect the GDPR. So we have a lot of questions from foreign companies asking us what are the new obligations, how they can implement the GDPR because they want to operate in Europe. So GDPR is only 4 months, so it is a learning curve for everyone. But I would say the first elements that we have are quite positive, I would say.
Well, thank you very much, Isabelle, but of course we'll come back later. Laurent Stéphanie, Accenture is a leader of digital transformation for a lot of international companies. So what are your first observations on the implementation of the GDPR by the French and by the international companies? Was it well accepted by the French companies?
When we talk about GDPR, I will follow some of the comments that have been done here. What's really important is to see it also as it's an opportunity. If you remember year 2K, basically, we had lots of thoughtful preparation, and at the end it was largely a non-event. And GDPR is important because trust is the cornerstone of the digital economy. So, you exchange data with an organization, you exchange data with your partner, it's part of an ecosystem. And trust is really where it's important. When we had a survey just this year, and we learned that 83% of CEOs, executives, believes that this is a reality. Trust needs to be here so that we have thoughtful exchanges between companies and with consumers. With this in mind, I mean, GDPR is actually putting the focus right where it needs to be. It needs to be here so that you build trust and you maintain trust over time. What is intriguing is that 2 years ago, just 2 years before GDPR, 91% of the companies we surveyed said, well, they were not ready because they didn't know where they properly stored the data and whether they will be able to properly process that data. And that's, in a way, is concerning. I mean, maybe it's a European thing, but that's concerning that there was not this perception that this data was not consumable, but this data was important, it was private. So in that sense, I would say, I mean, this is a good thing, and companies are getting ready. They understand that trust needs to be here so that you can build up and actually have a fruitful business with your consumers, with your partners.
So what you are saying then is that GDPR put the awareness about what people are doing with the data, and it was good both for the consumer and for the companies to understand it?
I mean, when we were talking about breaches and cyber resilience, and it's probably going to be a big topic here, but when you see that companies like Equifax in the US, I mean, 146 million records being stolen and on the dark web, when you hear about companies like Facebook over the weekend communicating on the fact that they have been breached with 15 million users, you see that security concerns are everywhere, and I mean, we need to have a focus and strong investment there. And we'll probably get time to talk about, AI, and we'll talk about all the new technologies later.
But by the way, speaking about AI, Laurent, I know you're a great specialist of AI. So President Macron said before that he wants France to become one of the major leader and player of AI. But to be a champion of AI, we need a lot of data. So do you think that, come back to this question of GDPR, aren't you afraid that the GDPR can prevent having a European champion? And then after I will come to you, Surji, because you are a Criteo. So could it be a problem? We need data to become a champion of AI.
So, being leaders in AI is a number of things. Data is an important thing, but it's a number of things. It's getting the talent right, and we have plenty of talents. We see, the OKIS system coming to Paris. I see Gary coming to Paris also, so very excited to see. There is a big focus on France, so we need the ecosystem, we need the talents, and we need the investment. And I think a lot of the things that have been discussed earlier shows that there is the intention to build investment right to build those talents. And then data. I will concur also to some of the comments that have been made earlier. Data is everywhere. Data is in the industry. We are at Paris Auto Show. We are working on numbers of innovation with a car manufacturer, whether it's on virtual experience, whether it's extended reality, whether it's on actually on the manufacturing plants, using data to improve the quality that you do. Doing quality control with images. So you can find data in many different places, and you can learn from it, and you can build innovation from that data. So I think the restricting it only to GDPR is a little too narrow. I'm sorry about that. What I mean is that it's extremely important, but we cannot say that GDPR and innovation is, one way or two bidirectional route. Actually, there is innovation possible with GDPR, it's creating a common market, like you said, and there is innovation beyond that because there is data everywhere.
Well, this is a very interesting answer. Thank you very much. And Gary, you already have. I see that you are a little bit skeptical about what you are, but it's interesting to see, what is the French vision. Suju, Rajan, we are really happy to have you. You are a very, very special person, considered as one of the most important women in the tech, so it's great that you are here with us today. So, we are very proud of Criteo, because Criteo is one of the global French unicorns, so we are very proud of you. So, Mel, the same question for you. You are working a lot with data, indeed. So, what do you think of the GDPR? Do you think it's a good law? Do you think it's a burden? What is your vision about it?
Thank you for having me here. I think the question deserves some amount of context. Can we do good AI, good research with GDPR compliant data? The answer is a definite yes. So we can definitely do good research, invent brand new AI that works even with GDPR compliant data. Okay. So the question becomes a lot more interesting when you get into AI, which is a lot more personal, which is out of the domain of what Criteo does, but given that my background is in research in machine learning, I'd like to speak to that as well. What happens when you start talking about health questions? Then it really becomes a very personal nature of the data. But I think where GDPR is trying to strike the right balance is, as long as you can explain to the user that this is why the data is going to be used, it is up to them to decide whether they want the data to be used for that purpose or not. So once the consent has been given, and I think the challenge for GDPR would be to implement it in a way that users actually understand why the data is going to be used. And if you look at some of these pop-ups that show up, it really just says, hey, we are going to use your data for personalization and advertising, which is, I think, is common knowledge at this point.
Yeah, at the same time, and you're right, as a consumer and user, I mean, I see that and I want to gain time, so I never look at it and just say, okay, because I want to use it. Now, what people are doing with my data, I don't care because, I don't know if I don't care, but I'm lazy, so.
Well, so remains to be seen what the good effects of GDPR are going to be, but to come back to your question, we totally can do good AI research with GDPR compliant data.
Well, thank you very much. But just like, Suja, I would like to come back exactly to what you're doing, because Criteo has just launched its AI lab dedicated to machine learning platform and research in France. So which means that you think it's possible to make AI in France? Do you bet that we can become some global champion?
Well, Criteo is already proof of this. It is a global champion of advertising technology. We are taken very seriously as far as this sphere is concerned. And to reflect back to what some of the earlier panelists said, the talent for AI, the training that the schools provide out here, some of the best minds that are working on AI all come from France. What can I say? The people is definitely there, and now with the students.